Hello and warm greetings. Welcome to the Analyst by Vajiram And Ravi, where we would try to comprehensively analyze 9 articles from the Hindu and the Indian Express, especially from the perspective of the upcoming mains exam. In the first article, we'll have a discussion with respect to the volatile neighborhoods of India and the lessons India should learn from such events. In the second article, we'll have a discussion with respect to the importance of corporate governance, especially in the times of artificial intelligence and artificial general intelligence. In the next article, we'll have a discussion with respect to the unsustainable practices in Indian agriculture, which have aggravated the water crisis. In the next article, we'll have a discussion with respect to the importance, the challenges, and the way forward with respect to the MSMEs of India. In the fifth article, we'll have a discussion with respect to the University Grants Commission. Finally, in the Prelims Snippets sections, we'll have a look at some of the very important articles for the preliminary exam. So the very first article is about the India's volatile neighborhoods. So what we are seeing is that different countries around India, they're actually witnessing turmoil conditions, that is unstable political conditions. And especially from the start of this decade, India has received one shock after the other in its neighborhood. Now this is actually a very big lesson for India. We'll see what are the different lessons which India should learn. Now this is with respect to GS2, India and its neighborhood relations. Now, in order to analyze the comprehensive situation, we need to go a little back in history. That is during the years of 2008, 2009 and 2010. Now, these 3 years were the periods when there was a significant ushering in of democracy. That is, ushering in of democratic spirits in different countries around India. For instance, if we talk about Bangladesh, so after a military rule which was led by General Moin Ahmed, it was the government of the Sheikh Hasina which was formed. And what we saw was that it was primarily because of the support of the women and the youth that Sheikh Hasina came to power. Now, after Sheikh Hasina came to power, what we witnessed was that India and Bangladesh developed a very good mutual beneficial partnership. And it was the Sheikh Hasina's government which took into consideration India's core interest, right? That is with respect to the security. Then what we saw in Sri Lanka was that after the defeat of LTTE, that is Liberation Tigers of Tamil Eelam, especially in the year 2009, what we saw was that there was a growth of democratic spirit in Sri Lanka. And since then, what we are witnessing is that there has been closer relations with a united Sri Lanka. Next, if we talk about Maldives, it was after 30 years of autocratic rule by President Gayoom that there were elections in the country and we had Mohammad Nasheed who came to power. And what we are witnessing is that in these 16 years, there have been 3 consecutive elections, and this actually speaks about the democratic maturity which Maldives has come into, right? Next, if we talk about Myanmar, it was in the year of 2010 when the military backed USDP. Now, what you need to keep in mind is that it was primarily led by military, right? Myanmar was led by military, and it was in the year of 2010 that there were elections and the military backed USDP, that is Union Solidarity and Development Party. It came to power, right? And what we also saw was that it was in the year of 2015 and 16 that there was a democratic wave in the form of the victory of NLD, that is National League for Democracy, which is led by actually Aung San Suu Kyi, right? Next, if we talk about our friend Pakistan, what we saw is that it was in the year of 2008 that there were elections in the country and the president, Pervez Musharraf, the former president, he was sent into exile. Now, what you need to keep in mind is that in all these events, throughout all these events, it also witnessed the significant increase in India's development assistance to different countries. For example, if we talk about Maldives, what we see is that India significantly increased the budgetary outflows to this country. Then if we talk about Myanmar, what we saw was that there was enhancement in the connectivity projects. You must remember that we have got the India-Myanmar Kaladan multimodal transit project. Now this was primarily started in the year 2010. Next, what you should keep in mind is that there was a significant outlay of funds, especially for the northern Sri Lanka, right, which was worst affected because of the civil war, right. Next, we have got a line of credit which was given to Bangladesh, almost $1 billion, right. So this period also coincided with increased development assistance given to these countries. Now, talking about the present situation, how come what we are witnessing is there is a democratic backsliding, right, in different countries around India? You talk about Bangladesh, you talk about Myanmar, you talk about Pakistan, or you talk about the other countries. There is a democratic backsliding. Now, if we talk about Bangladesh, what we saw was that significant protests were led by the students, and these protests actually resulted into an anti-government sentiment, right? And there were also allegations that there was a sort of authoritarianism which was carried on by the government, and there was also the presence of democratic deficit, right? And this ultimately led to the unceremonious departure of Sheikh Hasina, right? She was finally departed and she actually came to India's rescue. Then what we saw was that since then, since the time when Sheikh Hasina has been removed from power, there has been a rise of anti-India sentiments. Now, this is primarily led by one of the parties in Bangladesh known as the BNP, Bangladesh Nationalist Party, which is led by Khaleda Zia. Now, this party has had anti-India since its beginning, since the inception. And also what we are witnessing is that there has been a rise of radical outfits in Bangladesh, right? What is of concern is that in the last 15 years, India has invested tremendously, not just in material terms, but also in terms of diplomatic investments in Bangladesh, right? And that is what makes India's investments in jeopardy. Next, talking about Sri Lanka. Now, Sri Lanka actually witnessed the Bangladesh movement in the year 2022. When you had the President Gotabaya Rajapaksa, he actually fled the country. Now, this was primarily led by the allegations of corruptions and the allegations of mismanagement of the economy, right? And what we saw was that these protests were termed as Aragale protests by the students, by the youths, right? Then what needs to be kept in mind is that India made a timely intervention, and India has provided almost $4 billion of bailout package to Sri Lanka, and this has resulted into the reinvigoration of Sri Lanka's economy, right? Now, if we talk about Maldives, now what happened in Maldives was that India actually misjudged the situation. It was actually sure that President Moizu is not going to come to power, but he actually won because of the support by the people, right? And this finally resulted into a situation where the Maldives government said that India should withdraw its troops from the country, as they said that it is a violation of their sovereignty, right? But what needs to be kept in mind is that because of the personal interventions made by Dr. S. Jaishankar, what we are witnessing is that there has been a close engagement between the two sides. Next, talking about Myanmar. Now, what you need to keep in mind is that in the elections of 2020, we had the National League for Democracy, which is led by Aung San Suu Kyi. Now, this emerged victorious, right? But what we saw that it was in the February 2021 that there was a military coup led by the military junta of Myanmar, right? And since then, what we are witnessing is that the country has been ravaged by violence, and there is now a growing opposition to the military junta in Myanmar, right? In the form of ethnic armed organizations. That is, we have got some of the armed organizations, let's say the Kachin Independence Army, or let's say the Arakan Army, right? So because of these, what we are witnessing is that there is a growing opposition to the military junta. Also, what we have is the National Unity Government. That is the government which is led by the member of parliaments who are in the exile, right? Now, what you need to keep in mind is that this situation in Myanmar, it is actually leading to a very important concern for India, because the conflict is spilling into the India's northeast. For example, what we are witnessing in the state of Manipur or the state of Mizoram. So there are tough security situations which the Indian security agencies are facing, right? Again, it has renewed India's dilemma. Now, what is India's dilemma? India's dilemma is whether it should engage more with the military junta, so as to make sure that the anti-India insurgents who are having camps in Myanmar, they are actually being dealt by the military junta accordingly, or it should grow its partnership more with the democratic parties of the Myanmar, right? So that it can usher in more democratic spirits. Now, this is what the dilemma India foreign policy makers are facing. Now, if we talk about Afghanistan, see, since the time US actually withdrew from Afghanistan, it was in August 2021 that Taliban captured power. Now, what is of concern is that while America was actually having these stakeholder discussions, it did not include India, primarily not to offend Pakistan, right? Now, America calls India as a strategic partner. You must be aware of that. But still, it did not include India in the conversations. However, at present, what we are witnessing is that realism has dawned in Indian foreign policy circles, and India is slowly having the diplomatic maneuvering with the Taliban in Afghanistan, right? Now, if we talk about Nepal, what we are seeing is that there has been the return of Communist Party of Nepal, right, which is led by KP Sharma Oli. Now, Mr. Oli has had a history of having anti-India stance, right? So therefore, it also becomes a challenge to India's foreign policy makers. Next, if we talk about Pakistan. Now, it was in the year of 2022 when the civilian government, it was toppled, and it was toppled by the deep state of Pakistan. Now, we all know that the deep state of Pakistan, it is primarily led by the Pakistani army, right? Again, in addition to these challenges, what Pakistan is facing is that there is a provincial unrest. That is, for example, what we're witnessing is in the states like, in the provinces like Balochistan, where there has been unrest, where there has been a growing insurgency, right? Now, all these events, they are culminating into a situation where Pakistan is in a deep economic crisis, which is a result of the policies of the policymakers in the Pakistan, and what it is leading to in soaring inflation or having a very bad unemployment crisis, right? Now, what should be the lessons for India? Now, we all saw that different countries around India, they're actually having tough political situation. What should India learn from all these events? The very first is proactive engagement. That is, India should closely monitor the political developments. Its policies should not be reactive, rather it should be proactive, right? It should not be a result of reaction, rather it should be a result of proaction, right? Next, the engagement has to be multifaceted. That is, India should avoid relying on one side of the political spectrum. Take the case of Bangladesh. India had very good relation with the government which was led by Sheikh Hasina, but it had very bad relations when we talk about the BNP. And right now what we are witnessing is that there is a rise of popularity when we talk about the BNP in Bangladesh, right? So India should make sure that it has relations with almost all these stakeholders, all the political stakeholders in different countries. Next, India should have a pragmatic approach. That is, it should not be idealistic, it should be practical, right? And it should focus upon mutual interest. It should focus upon all those projects, all those interactions which can result into mutual interest, and it should avoid ideological biases. That is, the ideological biases which Indian foreign policy makers have, or those persons who are handling the Indian foreign policy, that should not dictate the relations of India with other countries. Next, that there should be the avoidance of communal lens. See, there have been allegations that the different statutory laws which are actually enacted by India, let's say the Citizenship Amendment Act. Now, this has fueled some sort of concern in India's neighborhood. So, India's interactions should not be based on such measures. That is, such actions should not be taken mere on communal lines, right? So, it should rather focus on broader regional cooperation. It should make sure that there is a win-win situation for all. Next, it should strengthen the regional mechanism. See, again, what we are trying to focus upon is these are the lessons which India should learn. There has to be greater regional cooperations in the form of the reinvigoration of the platforms like SAARC, or let's say the BIMSTEC, right? Then it should address domestic challenges. Now, this is very important. India is also grappling with some of the very deep challenges in terms of inequality, in terms of unemployment crisis. So it should focus upon such crisis in order to make sure that its own stability, in order to make sure that it is in a relative better position to deal with its neighbors, right? Now, what is the importance of these lessons? See, if India actually adheres to these lessons, if India actually tries to incorporate these lessons, it can usher in stability and security, and it can help India maintain stability and security in its domestic areas as well as in its neighborhood, right? Then it would be very important that India's role as a regional leader, it would be enhanced if India adopts a balanced and inclusive approach. Right? So India should follow a very balanced and nuanced approach, not based on ideological biases. Next, economic prosperity. Now, if you have a stable neighborhood, obviously it would usher in more economic prosperity for India and for different countries around India, right? Next, the way in which India deals with its neighbor, it would actually navigate and guide its position to become a global superpower. That is, India should focus upon having good relations with its neighbor, and that is only a condition that India can emerge as a superpower, right? So what we are witnessing is that there is indeed a sort of a turbulent situation, right, around different countries in India's neighborhood, and this demands for a proactive approach. It demands for a sort of a change, a structural overhaul in India's perception of these countries. in India's foreign policy circle, so that what we can ensure is that we have a more balanced, we have a more peaceful, we have a more stable neighborhoods, and then we can then capitalize upon different projects, be the connectivity projects, be the economic relationships, right? Be the more trade and investments. So therefore, these are the lessons which India should learn. Now, you need to actually also talk about a mains practice question. So the question says, the volatile neighborhoods of India highlight the political turmoil in respective countries. Highlight the lessons which India should learn from these events in order to strengthen its position domestically as well as regionally. So I would expect you to write an answer on this. Now, before I go to another topic, I have two quick questions for you. Two quick UPSC questions in order to assess your preparation. The first question is with respect to the international organizations, right? So can you tell me that which is the international organization which publishes the report World Investment Report, right? Which is the organization which publishes the World Investment Report? Now this is the first question. Second question is, it's with respect to geography. Now you have to tell me which is India's largest freshwater lake and which is India's largest freshwater lake in Northeast India. So I'm repeating, which is India's largest freshwater lake and which is the largest freshwater lake in Northeast India. So it has two subparts. I really want you to answer this question so that I can assess your preparation with respect to the UPSC. Now the next article is with respect to the importance of corporate governance, especially in the times of artificial intelligence and artificial general intelligence. So what we are witnessing is that AI and AGI have led to numerous opportunities and challenges in different domains. Therefore, it becomes really important to study the effects of AI and AGI on the corporate governance and what should be the way forward. Now, this is with respect to GS4, corporate governance. That is, it is a part of the ethics. Now, what do you mean by corporate governance? See, corporate governance is basically a system of rules, practices, and processes which actually determines how a corporate is to be governed, how a corporate is to be handled, right? How a company is to be managed. And it is basically a framework which determines the management of the company and the interest, how to balance the interests of various stakeholders. So you have got different stakeholders. How to balance the interests of different stakeholders is what the main objective of corporate governance is all about. Now, why this becomes important is because that what we are witnessing is that there has been significant transformation in the corporate structures around the country, around the world, right? For example, let's talk about the changing ownership structures. So we have been witnessing different mergers and acquisitions. Therefore, it becomes important that these changing structural ownerships has to be guided by the principles of corporate governance. Next, what we are actually seeing is the rise of social responsibility when we talk about the corporates. That is, corporates are also now being expected to fulfill their role, that is the social role. And what we see in India is we have got the corporate social responsibility, CSR, right? Therefore, corporate governance becomes important. Next, scams. We have been witnessing a lot of scams by different corporates. For example, we got the Satyam computers, right? So it becomes really important that the principles of corporate governance are followed so that these scams don't repeat. Next, corporate oligarchy. Now, what we are witnessing is that there has been a sort of dominance of some of the corporates, and that is actually reducing the competition. Therefore, the principles of corporate governance hold more importance so as to ensure that there is a competitive market in place. Next, globalization. As we are witnessing different MNCs, multinational corporations, now they are actually penetrating into different countries around the world. Therefore, following corporate governance principles becomes really important for these MNCs. Now, what are the key principles of corporate governance? The first is accountability. That is, the managers or the owners of the corporate should be accountable to different stakeholders. Next is transparency. That is, ensuring transparency when it comes to the functioning of the corporate. Making sure that adequate information and the right information and the timely information is provided to different stakeholders. Then fairness. That is, fairness in terms of the treatment to various stakeholders. Making sure that no one is treated in a more privileged manner, right? Next is responsibility. That is, the responsibility towards the stakeholders and to the society in general. Next is risk management. Making sure that the operations of the corporate are carried out in an effective manner so that the corporate might not fall into a sort of a bankruptcy or maybe a situation in which the corporate governance fails, right? Now, this becomes important, therefore, that we need to have a robust framework of corporate governance. And only this can ensure that there is a sort of more trust among different stakeholders, there is more ethical behavior by different stakeholders, and there is a long-term sustainability when we talk about the functioning of the corporates, right? Now, this is a basic outline with respect to the corporate governance. Now, how the AI, that is artificial intelligence and artificial general intelligence, is affecting the corporate functioning. See, first let's have a general discussion with respect to the artificial intelligence. Now, we all know that artificial intelligence is nothing but the simulation of human intelligence by a machine. That is, we as humans have natural intelligence, cognitive abilities. Now, if machines also have such kind of abilities, where the machines try to copy the human intelligence, what we say is it is artificial intelligence. Now, artificial intelligence actually works on the basis of a language model, right? So it is a probabilistic language model. That is, it is a probabilistic natural language model. For example, you must have seen translations. That is how the translations are carried out from one language to the other. Or you must have seen the speech recognition, right? So these are nothing but language models. Now, when these language models, they become more advanced in terms of handling more data, large amount of data, what we call them as large language models, right? So do remember, large language models. Now, what I said to you is that these machines, how they work is that we have got a particular machine, right? Now, this is based on a large language model. And what we see is that every machine is based on certain algorithms. That is a series of steps which the machine has to follow. Now, once a machine actually follows a series of steps, what we do is we feed in data, a large amount of data into the machine. And then this machine actually studies the data in great detail. And then if a question is posed to this machine, it actually goes through the data and gives a response on the basis of the data which is fed into the machine, right? That is a general outlay of how the artificial intelligence works. Now, what is artificial general intelligence? See, artificial intelligence, for example, let's take the case of Gemini, or let's take the case of ChatGPT. They are known as narrow artificial intelligence. That is, you ask questions, they'll respond. But artificial general intelligence is known as the last frontier, or as a final frontier of AI, the most evolved form of artificial intelligence. Let's take an example that if you have a personal assistant who can actually sense your needs, who can actually do as what you want, that is what we are going towards is artificial general intelligence. Now, that is a basic outline of AI and AGI. Now, that is obviously having influence on different domains, especially on the working of the corporates. Now, what McKinsey study says is, before that, as I said, that it is actually rapidly transforming the corporate landscape. Now, we had a very important study by the McKinsey, and the McKinsey group actually said that the AI and AGI, it has a significant potential to raise the global GDP by almost $13 trillion by the year 2030. That is, AI and AGI can help boost the global GDP by more than $13 trillion. However, the report also says that there are significant risks which are involved. Risks in terms of inequality. Risks in terms of deepening of inequality. That is, the benefits of the AI and AGI, they would not be equitably shared. Right? See, we all know we have got developed countries, we have got the developing countries. Now, primarily the research which is going with respect to the AI and AGI, it is going on in developed countries. Now, once you will have more research on this, there would be a sort of deepening of the inequality between the developed and the developing countries, right? So that is a different topic altogether. Now, what we say is that if we are having general principles, traditional principles with respect to having the corporate governance, that they are actually not sufficient in the times of AI and AGI. Therefore, there's a need to incorporate new provisions which actually align with the transformations which are actually being made by the AI and the AGI in the whole corporate functioning. Now, what is the importance of corporate governance in the age of AI and AGI? First, why corporate governance is actually important? Ethical concerns. See, with the introduction of AI and AGI systems, there are issues with respect to the biases, with respect to discrimination, with respect to accountability issues. Because, see, these systems are autonomous, right? And how would the system be accountable then, right? Therefore, it becomes important that we have corporate governance structure, a full, robust corporate governance structure. Next, risk management. With the integration of AI and AGI, there would be enhanced cybersecurity threats. There would be enhanced unintended consequences. And therefore, the whole system, the whole structure of corporate governance becomes more important. Next, transparency and accountability. AGI and AI, that is artificial intelligence and artificial general intelligence systems, they are actually autonomous systems and they are complex and opaque. Right? Normal humans or laymen, they don't have the knowledge with respect to the working of these systems. So how can these systems be transparent? How can you hold someone accountable? Next is stakeholder protection. What is needed is that there has to be the most importance has to be given to the stakeholder, right? So stakeholders have to be included, employees have to be included, customers have to be included, and communities have to be included into the overall decision making process. Now, what are the challenges which are posed by AI and AGI to corporate governance? First, we saw what is the importance of corporate governance. Now we are talking about what are the challenges posed by AI and AGI. See, first is algorithmic bias. As I told you, that any artificial intelligence system has to be given a lot of data. It studies the data and then it gives a response. Now, if the data itself is sort of biased or if it is discriminatory, do you think that the machine would give a right response? Obviously not, right? So there are sort of biases in the data. There are biases in the society, and those biases actually form the base of the data for the machines. And therefore, these biases would reflect the kind of biases which are present in the society. And the machines would not be in a position to give us the correct response. Next, lack of understanding. As I said, people are not aware with respect to the working of AI. These models are very complex. We have got highly skilled people who are working upon these features, right? These actually platforms. And therefore, it becomes important that we need to have adequate manpower who can go into the details of these technologies and make other people understand that these are the ramifications or these may be the repercussions with respect to this technology. Next is the regulatory gaps. See, as of now, the present regulatory structure is not competent enough, is not capable enough to deal with such challenges. For example, let's talk about the data privacy challenges. Or let's talk about the issues with respect to the accountability of these machines, because these machines are autonomous, right? So there is a need to enhance the regulatory structure overall, right? Next is accountability. See, as I said, that there is no human intervention. Machines are autonomous. They're working on their own. So how would you hold someone accountable, right? If there is some sort of mishappening, or if there is some sort of a corporate incident, so how would you hold someone accountable, right? So therefore, there has to be a way forward, and we need to actually incorporate these suggestions. The first is that there is a need of incorporating an ethical framework. That is, we need to address the issues such as biases. We need to address issues such as fairness and accountability. There need to be proper guidelines with respect to the accountability norms with respect to these AI and AGI systems. Next is transparency and disclosure. What we need to keep in mind is that there has to be a full-fledged disclosure norm. That is, these companies who are actually using these AI and AGI platforms, they need to be in a position to provide the transparent and the relevant information, right? And what we also need to keep in mind is that there has to be transparency with respect to the capabilities, the limitations, and potential risks which are involved with respect to the AI and AGI. Next is human oversight. Now, this is very important. There has to be a human intervention so we can make sure that these systems are running properly. That is on the basis of ethical framework, right? Next, risk assessment. Now, we need to actually make sure that there are proper risk assessments which are being carried out in order to make sure that these potential risks can be mitigated, right? Next, stakeholder engagement. Different stakeholders need to be integrated when we talk about the decision-making process. Be the shareholders, be the community, be the customers, all need to be integrated. Next is regulatory framework. So we need to develop appropriate regulations and guidelines which are in line with the present technological pace, which are not obsolete, right? Next, education and training. We need to actually provide adequate information to the people in general, right, with respect to these AI and AGI platforms and its ethical implications. Next, continuous monitoring. We need to have such kind of framework where there is continuous monitoring to evaluate the AI and AGI systems and its practices. So what we see is that, different corporates are integrating AI and AGI into their overall functioning. Therefore, it becomes important that the corporate governance framework is made more robust and in line with the AI, in line with the challenges posed by the AI and the AGI, right? So this is what you need to know with respect to this particular article. Now, before we go to the next topic, we have a mains question. So the question says that AI and AGI are rapidly transforming the corporate landscape, introducing new challenges and opportunities for corporate governance. Elaborate. So do write an answer on this question. So the next article is with respect to the Indian micro, small and medium enterprises. So there has been a recent report by the Global Trade Research Initiative which says that Indian MSMEs are facing tough challenges due to the influx of Chinese goods and they are unable to compete with such goods. Also, if you remember that just before a month ago, the Supreme Court actually said that the Indian banks, the Indian financial institutions need to have proper information systems in place so as to make sure that the accounts of MSMEs, they don't convert into non-performing assets, right? So we'll see what is the importance of MSMEs in India, what are the challenges they're facing, and what should be the way forward. Now, this is with respect to GS3, Indian economy and issues. Now, if we talk about the Indian micro, small and medium enterprises, what we see is that they're often termed as the lifeblood of Indian economy. That's something which is of very crucial importance. Now, why they're actually said so is because that they play a very important role when we talk about the industrial development, when we talk about in terms of generating employment opportunities, right? When we talk about the generating entrepreneurship opportunities, or when we talk about the balanced regional development, right? So it is on these fronts that what we say is that the Indian MSMEs, they are the lifeblood of Indian economy. Now, the Ministry of Micro, Small and Medium Enterprises, it actually classifies MSMEs into three types, right? Into three categories, primarily based on two fronts. First is the investment and the second is the turnover. Right. So do remember, this can be important for the prelims. Now, what the MSMEs classification says is that if you have any enterprises where the investment is not more than 1 crore and the annual turnover is not more than 5 crore, it would be classified as a micro enterprise. Then if you have a particular enterprise where the investment is not more than 10 crore and the annual turnover is not more than 50 crores, it would be classified as a small enterprise. And if you have a particular enterprise which has sort of investments not more than 50 crores and annual turnover not more than 250 crores, it would be categorized as medium enterprise. So this is a general classification for the MSMEs in India. Now, what is the importance of MSMEs? See, according to the data by the government, what it says is that there are actually around 7 crore MSMEs in the country, and they provide employment opportunities to almost 12 crore people, right? Huge number. Next, what we see is that they contribute significantly when we talk about India's GDP. That is according to the data by the Confederation of Indian Industries. The MSMEs in India, they contribute to almost 30% to India's GDP. That is a huge number. Now, this is something which has importance for inclusive development, for sustainable growth of Indian economy, right? Next, what we see is that the MSMEs are spread across the country. Now, why this becomes important is that we have a lot of MSMEs in the rural areas also. Now, if you have MSMEs which are spread all over the country, this would obviously reduce the rural to urban migration and it would lead to a more balanced regional development, right? Next, MSMEs foster innovation. See, once you have got the MSMEs, they actually make sure that there is a sort of local innovation which suits their local needs, and this actually leads to increase in the entrepreneurship in various domains, right? So that is what the importance of the MSMEs in India are. Now, what are the challenges being faced by the MSMEs? First and foremost is timely and affordable credit. Very important. See, what we see is that we have got traditional lenders. Traditional lenders means, for example, banks, financial institutions. Now, these traditional lenders, they are actually not giving adequate credit to these MSMEs. Why? Because they actually perceive these MSMEs as risky borrowers. Risky borrowers, why? Because these MSMEs, they don't have a credit history or they don't have the collateral, Adequate collateral. See, collateral is required before availing a loan, right? So if you don't have collateral, obviously it would lead to difficulties, right? Also, the RBI data says that only 16% of MSMEs in the country, they're able to avail loans from these traditional sources. Next is the limited access to domestic and international markets. Very important. See, we have got these small MSMEs, right? Now, they don't have that much amount of resources, and they're having stiff competition with the larger player. Therefore, what we see is that the larger player are actually having access to the international markets. And in fact, even these MSMEs, they're unable to compete in the domestic market itself, right? Just look at the topic of the today's article. What we are seeing is that the Chinese goods are actually competing with Indian products, that is the products which are being produced by the Indian MSMEs. Now, this is a very grim situation. Also, what we see is that the CIA data says that this is one of the very important barriers, lack of access to credit and other resources. That is a significant barrier to these MSMEs, right? Next, what we see is that there is a significant challenge when we talk about the technological upgradation. See, as I said, these MSMEs have limited resources. Now, they actually don't have the capacity to invest a lot in the technological upgradation, and therefore it leads to obsolete technologies, right? And therefore it leads to obsolete technologies, and thus it actually compromises the productivity and efficiency of these enterprises, right? Also, what the MSME Development Institute data says that almost 42% of the MSMEs in the country, they are having significant challenges in order to adopt the new technologies, right? Next is complying with a multitude of complex regulations. Now, what the World Bank says is that these MSMEs, they have limited resources. In addition, they have to comply by a lot of regulations, a lot of rules which are actually given by the government. Now, if you have got limited resources and if you are investing a lot of money and time in these regulations, making sure that you comply by these resources, obviously the MSMEs would not be able to focus upon the core business activity. See, every enterprise has a core business activity, right, which they are actually performing and earning money. But if they have to invest a lot of money, a lot of time in these other activities in order to comply with the regulations, they won't be able to focus on CBA, that is core business activity, and thus it would lead to having lower returns. Next is the lack of skilled manpower. See, there are some MSMEs, and in fact there are many MSMEs which require a significant, some sort of skill set, right? But what we are seeing in the country is that there is a mismatch when we talk about the skills demanded by the industry and the skills available. Now, this has also been highlighted by the National Skill Development Corporation report, right? Now, what have been the government interventions to support these micro, small and medium enterprises? The first and foremost is the Credit Guarantee Fund Trust for Micro and Small Enterprises. See, what this fund does is that let's say you have got a particular MSME A, right? So if you have a particular MSME A, now this particular MSME, it goes to a bank B, right? So once it is availing loan from the bank B, a particular fund, credit guarantee fund, it would actually give a guarantee to the bank that, see, even if the person is unable to return the money or to return the loan, then I would be here to help you out, right? So that is what we actually mean by the credit guarantee fund, right? So India has actually established a credit guarantee fund, and according to the data, in the year 2022-23 alone, almost 3.1 lakh crore of loans were actually given a sort of backing by this credit guarantee fund. Next, we have got the Pradhan Mantri Micro Units Development and Refinance Agency, commonly known as PM Mudra. Now, this provides loan to the tune of 10 lakhs to different enterprises. Now, this is actually one of the very important schemes, and it has given very good results. And data says that till now, more than 20 lakh crores have been given to different MSMEs through this PM Mudra scheme. Next is Credit Guarantee Capital Subsidy Scheme. Now, as I just told you, that having proper technological upgradation is very important for any enterprises. Now, this is a particular scheme, that is Credit Guarantee Capital Subsidy Scheme, which provides a subsidy of almost 15% to these enterprises so that they can actually enhance the technological usage in their functioning, right? Next is Pradhan Mantri Employment Generation Program. Now, this basically provides opportunities to different sort of people, especially in the rural parts of the country, so that they can actually focus upon having their own enterprises, right? Next is Entrepreneurship Skill Development Program. One thing what you need to keep in mind is that the earlier scheme, that is Pradhan Mantri Employment Generation Program, it has almost helped 1 crore of enterprises in the country, right? Next is Entrepreneurship Skill Development Program. The main objective of this program is to make sure that people are given adequate entrepreneurship skills. Now, why this becomes important is that let's say if you have a person who is given adequate skills and adequate resources, so he or she can start a particular enterprise. Now, once this person would start his or her own enterprise, he would also recruit different people, right? So, in addition to his earning potential, he would also increase the earning potential of other people, right? So he would give different livelihood opportunities to different people, and this would enhance the overall employment scenario and the overall economic conditions of the people, right? Next is Udyam portal. Now this is very important. See, what the government is trying to do is, it is trying to make a portal where different MSMEs can register and avail different services. So Udyam portal is nothing but a registration platform where different MSMEs can avail different services by the government. Next is the trade receivables e-discounting system, trades platform, which is actually promoted by the Reserve Bank of India. Now see, let me give you a description of this. Let's say you have got a particular MSME A, right? And today, let's say we have got 2nd of September, right? Now on 2nd of September, what Enterprise A does is that it provides services to a particular buyer, that is B, right? Now let's say the particular buyer B has said that I'm going to give you the money on 20th of September, right? So the MSME A says, all right, fine. Now during this course from 2nd of September till 20th of September, A would require a sort of working capital, right? So if there is a need of working capital, what A should do? So this A, it can go to a particular platform, particular sort of e-discounting platform, and then it can actually give its trade receivables and have that particular money, right? So that is how the trades platform work, and this has proven to be very effective, especially for those enterprises who need sort of working capital in order to deal with the sudden demand of money, right? Now, what should be the way forward? See, in order to have a healthy and prosperous MSME ecosystem, what we need is, we need to have a financial empowerment. So the International Financial Corporation says that there's almost a need of $1 trillion of funds when we talk about the MSMEs in different emerging economies, right? So there has to be a sort of expansion of these credit guarantee schemes. The government should actually focus more upon expanding these credit guarantee schemes so that the traditional lenders can give adequate amount to the MSMEs, right? Also, there needs to be focus upon alternate financing models. For example, let's say we can have peer-to-peer lending, or we can have sort of viability gap funding or angel investors, right? Next, fostering market access. There is a need to integrate the MSMEs with e-commerce platforms. If you would integrate the MSMEs with the e-commerce, it would reduce the geographical limitations which MSMEs have. That is, they would be in a better position to deal with the customers who are far from their places, right? Next, there needs to be reservation with respect to a specific percentage in the government procurement. So you also know that we have got the government e-marketplace, GEM portal. Tell me under which ministry the GEM portal works, under which department. Do write in the comment section, right? So we have got the GEM portal. Now this GEM portal, it has a specific component with respect to the reservation of the MSMEs. So it only procures from selected MSMEs when we talk about the reservation aspect, right? So there it has to be enhanced to other domains as well. Next is bridging the skill gap. Very important. The government and the industry should actually focus upon targeted skill development. They actually need to do a study and make sure that which industries need which type of skill set, and adequate programs should be. That is, the schemes should be demand driven, not supply driven, right? Then accordingly, the schemes can be molded and infused into the systems. Then there's a need to focus upon the apprenticeship programs. That is, those programs which focus upon the practical learning and not the theoretical learning, right? Then there's a need to simplify the regulatory process. Very important. See, again, as I said, in order to reduce the compliance burden on the MSMEs, what you need to keep in mind is that there has to be reduction in the compliance burden so that they can focus upon, as I said, their core business activities and increase their earning potential, right? And also, there needs to be the implementation of single window clearance, which takes lesser time for the clearances, right? Next is encouraging innovation and technology adoption. Very important. Adequate grants and tax benefits should be provided in the terms of the research and development, in the terms of making sure that we have got, for example, see, as I just said, that we have the credit guarantee capital subsidy scheme in order to make sure that there is proper technological upgradation. So schemes for upgradation of technology, for example, we have got by the government of India. So adequate schemes need to be there, so that there can be a sort of removal of obsolete technologies and new technologies which can enhance the efficiency and productivity of the enterprises. They can be integrated, right? So what we see is that these MSMEs are really very important, and in order to ensure an inclusive and sustainable growth, a balanced regional development, we need to make sure that these steps are actually followed. These steps are followed by the government and made sure that adequate credit is being provided so that the Indian MSMEs can be equally competitive. That is competitive in terms of, if I'm talking about the equal competition, that is competitive in the sense of having affordable and good quality products, right? So these are the measures which are required, and therefore MSMEs becomes very important for India, right? Now before we go to the next topic, we have a question. So the question says, the MSME sector is referred to as the lifeblood of the Indian economy. In the light of this statement, discuss the challenges and solutions pertaining to the MSME sector in India. So do write a particular answer on this question. Now the next topic is with respect to the Indian agriculture and the water crisis. So what we are witnessing is that there has been a prevalence of unsustainable agriculture practices, and this is actually deepening the water crisis. It is actually aggravating the water crisis in the country. So there's a need of reforming the agriculture sector so as to mitigate this water crisis, and also to make sure that there is enough food security, there is sustainable development, and there is a protection to the livelihoods of millions of farmers. Now this is with respect to GS3, Indian agriculture. Now let's talk about the gravity of the situation. See, we have got the Niti Aayog, and it publishes a particular index known as the Composite Water Management Index. So this particular index says that almost 600 million number of Indians, they face high to extreme water stress. It also says that 2 lakh number of people who die every year due to inadequate access to safe water, right? So we have got the water, sanitation and hygiene, right? So inadequate provisions of the wash facilities it actually leads to almost the death of 6 lakh people every year. And out of those, almost 2 lakh die because of the water, in unavailability of safe water. Next, what we see is that the data says, the Composite Water Management Index, that by the year 2030, India's water demand is projected to be the twice of the available supply. Right. Next, it says almost 6% loss would be there to the GDP by the year 2030 due to the water crisis. Now, this is the situation in the form of numbers when we talk about the water scarcity or water crisis in the country. Now, you can just see in the map that we have got the drought prone areas. So it is primarily the western areas of the country, western and the central parts of the country, which are drought prone. Now, see, if we talk about the linkage of agriculture and the water crisis, the picture actually is all about, that almost 90% of India's water, it is actually being used in the farming. So just imagine, 90% of the water is being used in the farming, and 80% of this water which is used in the farming, it is used for water guzzling crops. That is, for example, rice, or let's say sugarcane, right? So this becomes important. Now, if we manage the water usage with respect to these crops, then there can be a substantial reduction of the water usage, and this can actually make sure that it can actually alleviate the water crisis which the country is facing. We can deal more effectively with that, right? Now, what you need to keep in mind is that the semi-arid and the drought-prone areas of the country, it is where that what you are witnessing is the water-intensive crops which are being grown. Just look at this, the western part. Include the states of Punjab, Haryana, Western Uttar Pradesh. Now, these are the areas which are having sort of dry conditions, and the groundwater level is actually depleting. And it is in these areas that what we are witnessing is the sort of employment of these crops. And these crops are being grown here, and it is actually leading to sort of more reduction in the water levels in the ground. Therefore, there is a serious issue of groundwater depletion. Right. Next is there is inefficient canal irrigation systems. See, the canal irrigation systems in the country, they are in a very bad state, right? And they are actually dilapidated. And that what actually leads to is a condition that more and more dependence is there on the groundwater sources. So almost 65% of the irrigation needs in the country, they are being made on the basis of the groundwater resources, that is on the basis of the aquifers. So aquifers are being extracted for the water which is being used in the Indian agriculture. Now, Next, what we see is that there has been a significant climate change impact. See, over the decades, what we're witnessing is that there has been human-induced climate change. There has been increase in the greenhouse gas emissions. There has been the rise in the average temperatures. And this is actually increasing the intensity and the frequency of droughts and floods. And that is actually affecting the water usage in the Indian agriculture, right? Now, what are the key reforms which are needed? See, the first is the water conservation measures. We need to employ efficient irrigation technologies. Let's talk about the sprinkler irrigation or the drip irrigation, right? So these measures need to be employed so that there can be minimization of the water wastage. Next is rainwater harvesting, very important. What we have seen is that Tamil Nadu government has implemented this in Chennai and it is made mandatory. So rainwater harvesting has to be done at the individual level, at the community level, right? So that we can utilize this rainwater for the Indian agriculture. Next is water management plans. The sad part is that there is the absence of these water management plans even at the local level. So the central government prepares it, the state government prepares it, but it is not being followed by the local authorities. So what we need to do is that there has to be proper water management plans. The center has to guide the states and the state has to make sure that the local authorities are having adequate plans in order to deal with the water resources. Next is the crop diversification. Very important. See, there is a need to shift from these water guzzling crops to more efficient crops which require less water. Let's take the case of millets, pulses, oilseeds. So there has to be sort of more inclination towards these crops. Now, this cannot be done just on the basis of the supply side. There has to be a demand which needs to be created, and the demand can be created by the government. Let's say the government can include these crops, the millets, the oilseeds, the pulses in the midday meal, right? And then it can procure these crops from the farmers. Next, what we need to make sure is that there has to be crop rotation. Now, crop rotation is very important in order to maintain the fertility of the soil, right? So this has to be done effectively. Next, what we can do is there needs to be the employment of precision agriculture. That is integration of science and technology to the agriculture, right? So technology has to be adopted in terms of drones, in terms of remote sensing by the satellites, in terms of the Internet of Things, so that adequate information can be extracted from the agriculture, and then adequate policies can be made on the basis of those inputs which are actually made on the basis of these technologies. Next is efficient resource management. Very important. See, what you need to do is that we need to use the data analytics in order to make sure that we optimize on the water usage, we optimize on the pesticide use. See, if we just go by the data analytics, we would only give that much amount of water or that much amount of pesticide which is actually required by the plants, not in abundance, right? Next, what we need to focus upon is the policy reforms, right? So the government needs to make sure that it is giving a lot of subsidies when we talk about the water, when we talk about the electricity distribution. So these subsidies need to be done away with, right? So that there is a sort of more adequate response, more adequate usage of these electricity and water resources. Next, pricing mechanisms. So there has to be adequate pricing mechanisms for these sources. Governments need to make sure that these resources are actually priced in such a manner that they reflect the market levels, right? They reflect the market scenario. Next, diversifying procurement. Very important. See, we all know that the government has an assured sort of procurement policy, right? The government also conducts the procurement through the minimum support price. Now, can you just tell me that the government of India decides the MSP? On whose recommendation? What is that body on whose recommendation the government of India comes with its own MSP prices, right? So do mention in the comment section. So what we see is that because of this MSP, there has been a tendency to focus more upon these water guzzling crops. So adequate provisions need to be made. So adequate MSPs have to be given to these other crops. Let's say the oilseeds, the millets, the pulses, so that the farmers can actually shift to these crops, right? So there has to be diversification when we talk about the procurement. Next is community participation. Very important. The water user associations need to make sure that there is adequate usage of water. They need to make sure that there is no wastage of water. Adequate authority and power need to be given to them in order to regulate the distribution of water resources. Next, awareness campaigns. Different farmers, different people around the country, they need to be made aware with respect to the harmful effects of using water to such a level. making sure that they understand that water has to be used judiciously, making sure that they understand that water is something which is not to be used mindlessly, right? So adequate provisioning need to be given so that there can be a community awareness. So what we see is that there is a prevalence of these unsustainable practices, and this is actually deepening the water crisis. These measures need to be employed in order to make sure that we have got a sustainable agriculture in place, so that we can assure the food security, we can assure the livelihoods of millions of farmers in the country. So that is what you need to know about this article. Now, before we go to the next topic, we have a mains question. So the question says, excessive and rampant use of water in agriculture is one of the prime reasons for water crisis in India. Analyst also suggests some measures to improve the water use efficiency in agriculture. So do write a particular answer on this. Now, I have a particular prelims question of 2020, and I really want you to answer this. So the question says, consider the following statements. In the case of all cereals, pulses, oilseeds, the procurement at minimum support price is unlimited in any state or union territory of India. In case of cereals and pulses, the MSP is fixed in any state or UT at a level to which the market price will never rise. Which of the statements given above is or are correct? One only, two only, both one and two, neither one or two. I really want you to answer, and do answer in the comment section. So the next topic is with respect to the University Grants Commission. Now the UGC, that is the University Grants Commission, has recently said that Delhi has the most number of fake universities in the country, right? So therefore it becomes important to study about the mandate of the UGC. Now this is a part of GS2, social sector education. See, it was in the year 1944 that we had a specific committee, and this committee actually published a report known as the Sargent Report. And this report actually talked about that how the system, national system of education in India should be there, right? And this actually proposed the University Grants Committee, which was established in the year 1945, and this was tasked with dealing with all the then existing universities, right? And what you need to keep in mind is that this University Grants Committee, it was to be based on the lines of University Grants Commission of the United Kingdom. Then what happened in the year 1948 was that a University Education Commission was established under the chairmanship of Dr. S. Radhakrishnan to actually report on the Indian university and to see and to suggest improvements and extensions to these universities. Now, it was in the year of 1953 that the UGC was formally inaugurated by the India's first education minister, that is Maulana Abul Kalam, right? And it was in the year of 1956 that UGC was made a statutory body through the UGC Act of 1956. Now, at present, UGC is actually having a lot of issues with its functioning, and therefore there's a proposal to actually replace the UGC with Higher Education Commission of India, and this is in consideration stage. Now, what you need to keep in mind is that the UGC has the unique distinction of being the only grant giving agency in the country which has been vested with two responsibilities. So primarily it has two responsibilities. The first is it provides the adequate funds, and the second for the coordination, determination and maintenance of standards in the institutions of higher education, right? So this is what you need to know about the University Grants Commission. It can be important for your prelims exam. Now, coming to the prelims snippet section, we have got the first article as Dongriya Konds. Now, this is a particularly vulnerable tribal group. See, what you need to understand is that we have got different tribes in the country, and the government, in accordance with the principles of the constitution, it actually deems some particular tribes as scheduled tribes. Out of these tribes, there are some tribes which are very vulnerable, and therefore the government has actually declares them as the particularly vulnerable tribal groups, right? So Dongriya Konds, they are a particularly vulnerable tribal group. Now, if you just look at the map, what you can see is that they are actually prevalent. They're actually present in the Odisha state and in the Niyamgiri Hills, right? So do remember this. Now, they are located in the Niyamgiri Hills in the state of Odisha, and they actually, their livelihoods are based on very primitive practices, right? That is, forest, they are dependent on the forest, they are practicing horticulture and shifting cultivation. Now, Niyamgiri Hill range, which falls under the Raigada and Kalahandi district in the southwest of Odisha. Now, this is actually famous for one of the very important ores, right? So can you just tell me what is that ore for which the Niyamgiri Hills are famous for? Tell me the name of that particular mineral, right? Now, its highest point is the mount known as Niyamgiri or Niyam Dongar. Now, I need to ask one more question. There's a very important river which actually originates from the Niyamgiri Hills. You need to first tell me the mineral the ore which is actually present in the Niyamgiri hills, and the second, the name of the river. Now this can be very important for your prelims, right? So do mention the comment section. Now the language which is used by these Dongriya Konds, it's Kui language. Now this particular language does not have a script, but it is spoken among the people of the Kond community. So that is what you need to know about this particular tribe. Now the next topic is with respect to the mapping of Iran. Now Iran is in news because of various reasons. The first is because of its strategic rivalry with Israel and America, and the second is because of the loss of life of the former president of Iran, Ibrahim Raisi, right? Now it becomes important to look into the map. So if you just see that Iran is actually, it's surrounded by different countries. So we have got Pakistan here, we have got the Afghanistan here, we have got Turkmenistan, we have got the Azerbaijan, we have got the Iraq, and we have got then here the water body, that is Persian Gulf. Now there are some important locations which can be very important for your exam. For example, let's see the particular mountain range. So we have got the Elbrus mountains on the northern part of the Iran, and we have got the Zagros mountains here on a bit southern side, right? Next we have got two deserts, that is Dasht-e Kavir and Dasht-e Lut. So do remember this. Now there are two important, very important ports. One is we have got the Bandar Abbas, right? So it is present somewhere here, and then we have got somewhere here Chahabahar port, right? So this becomes really important. Then we have got one of the very important straits known as Strait of Hormuz. Now this is between the Gulf of Oman and Persian Gulf, right? Next, India is also investing in a lot of connectivity projects with respect to Iran, right? So we have got a particular port, that is Chabahar port. Now Chabahar port has basically two ports. One is Shahid Kalantar and the second is Shahid Beheshti, right? So it has two ports with it. Now again, India is actually focusing upon this in order to bypass the route through the Pakistan, right? So that it can access the Central Asian countries and further to Russia. It is also a part of the INSTC, International North-South Transit Corridor, which aims to connect the Indian mainland with that of the Central Asia and Russia through Iran and Afghanistan, right? So you can just see that we have got Chabahar port, and through the rail and road and water linkages, it is being connected to the Afghanistan and then further to different Central Asian countries. So this is what you need to know with respect to Iran. Now the next topic is with respect to the country of Namibia. Now the country of Namibia, which is a part of the southern part of the Africa. Now this is grappling with serious food security issues, right? And this is primarily because of the drought which the country has faced. And it is because of that reason that Namibia is actually culling a lot of animals so that it can provide the meat to its population, right? So what you need to keep in mind is that we have got the country of Namibia, as I just said, it is a part of the southern Africa, and we have got the bordering countries. So you can see we have got South Africa, we have got Botswana, we have got Zambia, we have got Angola. Now what you need to keep in mind is that there is a sort of Namib desert. So we have got Namib desert on the coastal part. Now one of the reasons that why you have got the coastal part of Namibia as a desert is because of the prevalence of a particular current. Now you need to tell me that which current actually flows from here to here, right? Now this is a cold current. Now we all know that if you have a particular cold current which is flowing through near a particular coastal body, it gives a desiccating effect, a drying effect, right? And that is the reason what you see is that there is a prevalence of a desert in the Namibia. So just tell me, just write in the comment section, what is the name of that particular current? Now, you can also see that there are some other sort of positions, some other locations in this particular map. So we have got the Etosha National Park, we have got the Awas Mountains and other locations. So this particular country can be important for your prelims. Next, talking about the country of Azerbaijan. So what we see is that, see, Azerbaijan over here, it has a particular location over here, which is known as the Nagorno-Karabakh region. Now, Nagorno-Karabakh region in Azerbaijan, it has a lot of ethnic Armenians, and that has been one of the source of tensions between Armenia and Azerbaijan, right? Now it borders Caspian Sea. You can just see the capital Baku, right? Again, this location becomes important in order to know more about the Caspian Sea. So you can just see that we have got the Caspian Sea here, and Caspian Sea is surrounded by different countries. We have got Iran, we have got Turkmenistan, we have got Kazakhstan, we have got Russia, we have got Azerbaijan. So do remember. Now coming to the Black Sea, over here we have got Black Sea. Just look at this. So we have got some of the countries who adjoin, which border the Black Sea. We have got Turkey, we have got Georgia, we have got Russia, we have got Ukraine, we have got Romania, we have got Bulgaria, right? So do remember, these are the countries which actually border the Black Sea. Again, I am repeating: Turkey, Georgia, Russia, Ukraine, Romania, Bulgaria, right? Now, this is a particular Sea of Azov, right? And this is the Strait of Kerch. And this is the Crimean Peninsula, very strategic location, right? Again, this is what you see in the map is the Sea of Marmara, M-A-R-M-A-R-A, Marmara, right? And this is nothing but the Bosphorus Strait, right? There is another strait which actually goes down. If possible, write in the comment section. So that is it for today. I hope you really enjoyed the session. All the best. Thank you.